Warning, this show contains adult language. Welcome to another edition of Up and In It. I'm your host, Adrian Babashoff, and if you're new here, welcome as well. And if you're wondering what the show is about, it's entirely dedicated to improving quality of life for both people and planet through liberation and independence, moving you from surviving to thriving and living life on your own terms. The ideal homestead, water. That's what we're going to be talking about today, but there's a lot of things that I want to cover throughout a series of these, and today it is about water, and it's episode 285, by the way. And I've just been really sick of everything that's been going on, all of these crazy changes, stuff that we've been talking about on the show, and I've been really considering going back to homesteading like I did when I was a child, the way I was brought up, and I think I want to do, that's the inspiration, so let's get into it today. So water is one of the most important, significant components to life. Whenever we go to seek another planet or another land, some place where maybe you want to farm, or basically if you wanted to explore scientifically through the galaxy, the very first thing we're going to look for is water and oxygen. So it's very vital for survival, for us as human beings, as the plant life. Everything on this globe evolves around water. Water has so much significance that it goes even beyond all that, and I'll touch a little bit on that today. But the very first thing I want to say, to get this in context, is to understand the amount of water. Now, in a 1-inch rain, it is said that you're going to get about 0.6 gallons of water in a 1-inch rain on a 1 square foot surface. So these are things to take in consideration, the mathematics and things, as we go through all the information today to set up water on your homestead. And I also want to mention too that it's not just about homesteading. If you're a backyard gardener and things like that, small scale, a spin farmer like myself, where you farm off somebody else's property in the big city, in the suburbs, wherever you are, the information today is definitely going to be valuable for you. So we need to take in context where you're located at, and geographic location is everything. Now that we understand about rainfall, about how much, to actually compute of what we can catch and all that kind of things, we have a clear kind of understanding. But we actually have to have rain, right? I live in Sunnyside, California, and for those of you watching the show on YouTube or on video, it's very early in the morning, so that's why it's kind of dark here. I'm not trying to be some evil villain, bald-headed eagle here. But yeah, location's everything. And here in San Diego, in North Counties where I reside, we average about 11 inches to 13 inches at max a year. And you can't really go off that. We're going to talk about that as well. There's been off years. I believe that there was, in some areas of the cities last year, which was supposed to be a fucking drought, we got 2.5 to 3 inches of rain in one day. That was a pretty significant rainfall. So nobody can really tell how much rain. You can't calculate this and say, well, there's a certain pattern here. Mother Nature does what it's going to do regardless of what we think and our test objects, tell us. And history. And written history. That's what I look at, is a lot of things are based on, recorded history rather than written. What was the major rainfall and what region? I guarantee you the Native American Indians didn't take a fucking buffalo bone out of their mouth and say, you know what? I think I'll measure the rain today to see how much. They didn't give a shit. They're just like, it's raining. That's good. That's what we fucking need. We don't need to bring beacons and shit out here. So there's no telling. There could be a 1,000-year storm that comes in. One thing I will say on that subject matter is that you're able to tell through the landscape, which is very interesting. Where I live in North County, San Diego, there's lots of bare rock. Now, that could be happening from many different occurrences, things in nature, but a lot of erosion and things like that. The lowlands, for instance, if any of you guys have ever been to the desert, and probably anywhere you live, really, if you take a look at a dried up area, where water in a valley, you can literally see some places where there's 6 to 8 foot ledges, just these walls where it's showing you that water has come in. Water follows the least path of resistance. So any type of valley or contour, it's going to go down there and it's definitely going to erode things. So that kind of tells you how much water in that geographic location has actually been falling. Again, we actually can compute 0.6 inches 0.6 gallons of water per inch of square foot surface. So geographic location is everything as well. That's why I'm considering getting out of a place like Southern California, because it is wonderful. The weather is great. You can grow pretty much year round, but water is definitely an issue. And here in 2021, we're actually experiencing a lot of drought, and I think all over the place, in all the different parts of the world as well. So geographic location, I think, is definitely, if you're looking to homestead, which is the subject matter, I look at places that have water, that lots of rainfall. We could look at places like the Hawaiian Islands. We can look at South Carolina, Florida, Oregon, Washington, West Coast and East Coast. Where are places where we get significant rainfall, or where are places that we get significant snowpack, and you get runoff on rivers and things like that. I prefer the rain. Geographic location too, a little bit off subject, but I guess kind of on, is I prefer a place where I can grow, semi-year round, where it doesn't freeze over as hard, right? South Carolina, Florida, even Oregon. Oregon's a little crazy animal. Washington, right, even more. The further north you go, the colder it gets. But I'd rather depend on lots of rain. For instance, one of the places I've been that I've been interested in is South Carolina and Florida. And South Carolina in particular is a lot more affordable, a lot more country living, homestead friendly, it seems like. But they get anywhere from 40 to 80 inches of rain. Again, that's geographically where you're located. There's mid state, there's upper state, there's lower state. There's many things to take in considerations there. And happy to say we're parked today, so we don't have the background noise in my 7.3 liter pickup diesel truck here. And I'm going to, before I move on real quick too, I just want to explain before I forget, is that I'm at the busiest time of the season of my life right now, really. There's so much going on that I'm only going to try to limit it to just one show a week. So we're going to take a very calmed approach and maybe do like an hour, hour and a half, however long it takes to get a good, clear, concise show out there, comfortable. So expect to only hear about one. If I do get the time, I will actually do 2 or maybe 3. Stick to the regular schedule, which was Tuesday, Wednesdays, and Thursdays. So, all right, getting back on it. Soil types is another thing to take in consideration. Not just rain. We talked about erosion. One of the things you can do, whether you're in your backyard or you're looking for a homestead, is you can take some soil samples. And one thing you can do is you can take a cup of water and say like a quart-sized mason jar or a plastic, recycled clear jar, a vessel with a lid. And what you're going to do is you're going to take yourself about a cup of soil out of your backyard. Just take it right from the surface. You don't need to go all the way down. Just kind of get a good mixture of maybe about 6 inches down in the ground should be sufficient enough, and just kind of blend that all up, put that in the cup, dump it inside the vessel, and you're going to fill it with water, and you're going to shake the whole thing up till the whole thing's just clouded and all suspended. What's going to happen is you're going to set that there for a day, 2 days, and everything's going to settle. And what's going to happen is all the heavier stuff's going to settle at the bottom, and then you're going to get these layers. And what you're going to find is you're going to find most likely sand, the amount of sand that you have in your soil, all at the bottom is the heaviest. And then you're going to have such things as clay and silt. And then you're going to have a little tiny dark matter on the top. That's actually your your topsoil, right? Your live organisms and your actual soil stuff to grow in. Sand and silt and clay and all that is soil. It's dirt, but it's not really doesn't have the live organic. It's not organic matter in there, right? It's like a medium. So what's going to happen is this thing's going to set in layers, and that's going to kind of tell you your type of soil, of what you have going on underneath your feet, of where you're trying to grow your food. So there's a bunch of YouTube videos and stuff about it. You can read on how to actually figure out exactly what to do, what to plant, how to amend all those things. I don't want to make this show too long because we have a lot of important things to talk about today. So yeah, your soil types really, really matter. I will give you, as we go through, I'll try to remember our soil types and give you guys some tips and tricks of what you can do. But I will tell you this, if you do have a high sandy soil, say a place like Florida, We have listeners all over the world too, I guess. So I'm talking about United States. I don't know what's your region really, but they're any place that's like Florida, like maybe Fiji and stuff like that, where you've got not much contour to the land, very flat. You're going to have sandy soil. That means a lot of the water, the rainfall that falls, or any irrigation that you do, is going to sink through that soil, that sandy soil, relatively fast. It's going to be very hard to hold soil there. Now, there is ways to amend things like that, such as burying wood, doing what's called wood core garden beds, where the wood decomposes, and it would take many years for this to decompose to actually transform that sand and introduce such things as clay and silt and stuff like that, and organic matter. And eventually you can turn in a very sandy, heavy, dominant sandy soil into actually lush soil. There are ways through permaculture and natural farming and just ingenuitively doing experiments. So clay soils are pretty interesting. That's what I have where I live. And what's interesting is when they're very hard. So when a rainfall comes, you're going to get that water just shooting right off the top of it. So if you get a 1-inch rainfall, most of that water is going to, in my opinion anyway, guys are probably going to hear all kinds of different shit from different people, but that water is really going to rush really fast until it accumulates in an area where it can pond. What we have is that once clay does get wet, though, that water just likes to soak in and will actually turn to mush. But what happens when the sun comes out, especially if you say you had a low point where all that water accumulated and it all settled into the ground, what's going to happen is the sun's going to bake the layer like a clay pot. It's actually going to harden the whole top, and this is actually a good thing. It's going to seal the water basically in the ground. As the water slowly starts to evaporate, slowly starts to dry. You can imagine the soil under the ground, the subsoil is like a sponge. Water's going to travel through gravity to the least path of resistance. So it is going to leave, it is going to migrate, but it minimizes the amount of evaporation with that hard cap on top. So just a little bit of some pointers there. Now, land size, we were talking about whether you're doing a giant homestead, or as I like to call it, city-stead. I'm not sure if somebody's already taken that, but that's, city-steading. It's like homesteading in the city, and it's definitely possible. That's what I'm doing. I've done some shows, I believe, on that where I'm utilizing other people's lands, and you can do meats, vegetables, all kinds of different things. But size does matter. And if you're going to do such things as like a pond, you're going to do rain catchment, right? Which we're going to talk about. If you want to do any type of rain catchment, if you want to dig a well, if you want to build yourself a big giant cistern, if you wanted to build yourself a little reservoir, like a big giant pond and things like that, I think that the land size does matter. Where I live too, we're going to talk about contours. You have a big lot of land. That means that you're able, and we talked about geographic location. Now, if you were located over by a mountain and things like that, we're kind of prematurely going into my notes here, and you had a very large piece of land, but you strategically got it to where you're backed up, where everybody's water is rushing into your property, you are going to be in really good shape as far as water conservation and water catchment. But let's not shoot we're putting the cart in front of the horse here. All right, my next note is calculating rainfall for maximum success and minimization of destruction and danger. And I do mean danger. Now, we have people in the city collecting water off their roof into rain barrels and things like that. And what's happening is that those rain barrels are filling up, right? And then they're dumping lots of water right at the foundation of a house. Some people, I don't know why, I think I heard they put rain barrels in their basement. And then next thing you know, the basement's flooding, right? As we said, you can never really calculate how much water is going to fall down, because any given year, no matter what fucking science says that they can predict, I don't think that they can predict everything, for sure. I know that they can't. So to calculate to the best that you can, what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to look at the almanac, a farmer's almanac, I believe. You want to look at recorded history of what we've had, and you will sometimes see some patterns. Now, I don't think that the dates really matter. what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to figure out what was the worst case rainfall that fell in this region. I know that, I think it was Texas or something like that. Something so ridiculous, guys, where it was like 20, if memory serves me correctly, I didn't have time to verify this, but I think it was something like 25, 30 inches of rain in one day. There was houses literally halfway underwater. So those are things, when I say danger and success, I really, excuse me, I really want to sneeze my head off. I really want you to think about that. Now, if you're going to dam water up, right? If you're going to build yourself a dam, you would definitely want to figure out what was the worst case scenario of the water that fell in that region, because when that dam breaks, whatever's below it, whatever's even above that, it's going to start sucking that water out, right, from whatever's above it. It's going to start pushing whatever's in its pathway on the bottom. You're looking at destruction. And if you're doing a homestead and you built yourself a little pond, you decided to dam off a little valley area, that dam gives out. It could kill livestock, people. It could kill your plants, your trees, whatever's downwind. It could just be this big deluge of just this wash that comes out. It could also wash into your neighbor's house and cause, wash out a fence, move a car, depending on the size that you're doing. So you want to calculate rainfall for maximum success for sure. You want to be aware of danger. And for maximum success is that you don't want to waste any of that water. So basically you always want to build bigger than what you think. I think you should take the rain barrels out of your basement. Just don't do that. If you're in the city, and you need to calculate. So if you're actually burying pipes in the ground, which I've seen people do, filling up rain barrels, stuff like that, basically, so all the water coming down the gutter, and you got this small little, say, a tenth of an acre or something, you can ruin everything, all the work that you've done, if all that water, if you have a 3 to 4 to 5 inch rain in one day, and you flood everything off, you'll need to calculate that. You'll need to come up with some sort of remediation, some sort of problem solving. What are we going to do in case that happens? Do you have, for instance, I would say if you're in the city and you have a rain gutter with a pipe coming down that collects in barrels, you'll need to know that, hey, you're filled up, the ground is saturated. Is there a way we can deflect or hook up, have a hose or a pump, or better yet, have yourself a piping system to where you can actually shut off a valve, turn your other valve on, and have that water spill down your driveway and go to where the city likes to do, is form a water catchment system where everything goes into a cemented river and out to the ocean instead of out on the land where we could fucking use it and our tax fucking dollars are paying for things like that, because it's completely stupid. And how do I fucking know this? Because I almost got busted by the Environmental Protection Agency when we were power washing a site, a roof site, what I was working on, and I showed the fellow how I had a whole water catchment system, and he was completely impressed. It was a leach system that barely trickled water out into the land, and he was like, well, I'm not sure, I'm not that, and I kind of explained that the water's clean, and he says, oh, wow. And then I asked him, well, instead of picking on me, what's going on right across the street where we have all this erosion and all these cement rivers? Look at all the devastation here. I think it was in Ventura, California. Why isn't this water at least caught inside giant reservoirs instead of spread out, across the land, but let it at least seep in reservoirs, let it seep back into the water table? He says, because it would cost a lot of money and not too many people are interested in paying for infrastructure like that. But we'll pay for infrastructure of so many other things instead of taking care of our land and our trees and our water's fucking supply. What did we talk about in the beginning? Water's pretty much fucking everything. You take California and the valve gets shut off, or it's just dry where there's nothing to pump over here. Watch how fucking fast this place goes to hell. That's why I'm considering going. That's my rant. So yeah. So calculating rainfall, take a look at the most significant rainfall, the biggest one that's ever fallen, and plan on that, right? If you don't have room, if you have a very small piece of land, size matters, then you're going to need to divert that water somewhere else. If you do have land, you want to build bigger than what you thought that you think that you're going to need. So contours and why you should care. So I think we already touched on that. Now, I'll give you guys perspective. When I used to live in a town called Fallbrook in California, I had 5 acres of land before I decided to live tiny, and it was a lemon orchard and things like that. And basically on the road, you can imagine the road was like a U shape, a very slight U shape. It was concaved. So the road, my house, was located right at the bottom of the U. Now, the rainwater that would come off into the gutters would actually flood into my property, and I got so, well, it wasn't my property, it was the property that I was renting, but I still got so excited on every crazy rain event where I was able to be home, and I would watch the way that water flowed. I had this thing in my mind where maybe I would purchase that land one day, and I just want to figure out how this, what's going on. I literally cut out areas of the dirt embankment to capture this water, to let it flow on this property that I was renting. And it came in from both areas. So contours and why you should care. Contours are very, very important. Before I forget, let's go into danger of contours. Contourless land. Now, when we start thinking about South Carolina, Florida, Louisiana is a very good one. It's below sea level. Is it the town there? That's why everything's so wet, right? That's why there's so much swamps and stuff like that. So being in a hurricane or being in places like I mentioned Texas, which isn't, it's very flat, right? There's not much contour. You get an event where you have, something crazy like Texas where, like I said, I believe it was 20, 30 inches of rain and within a day or 2 days, you're going to get houses that are halfway covered underwater. Now, contour is very important. My property that I was going back to that, it was like a U. At the bottom of my property, it was like a bowl, way at the whole other end. Perfect place to build a small lake, but it wouldn't be perfect by you. We'd have to have a pump to pump the water up. But all that water would rush down there, and say in an instance that we had a 20-inch rain, that area would fill up, but it would actually erode into my neighbor's yard, and naturally, it wouldn't be my fault. And it would actually fill up. Once it filled up that cup, that bowl in my area, it would actually spill over into the property next. And because the contour of the land was so significantly high, it wasn't like a mountain. It was just, I don't even know how to explain the pitch here. But we would have a big old giant lake, probably about maybe 100 by 300 feet wide. And the house was located way at the top. So geographic location and everything of your home, your trees, when you're talking about capturing rain and about water, very significant. So all that water, the reason why you should care is that a lot of that water settled. And we have a high clay soil here, right? We have a lot of things obstructing the contour. We had trees going on. We had stuff as Hugelculture mounds, which I started screwing around with, playing with, right? So there was a lot of different things, retaining walls and stuff like that, an old abandoned foundation. So what happens is all that water would come in from the street, and it would stick on this contour, and all that water would seep down into the ground, and the sun would come out and dry it in various different areas. But what does water do? It likes to take the path of least resistance. So one of my observations on this property that I was renting, we did no irrigation on our lemons and limes that were there. And one thing I found is when the summer came and it was like September, it was super dry. I mean, all the trees on the top area of the contour were kind of dry, dead, and just looking like shit. Everything at the bottom, again, zero irrigation, is because that water was slowly flowing underground, meeting its place down at the bottom. And that's where we had the richest, most juiciest limes and lemons that you could ever imagine, without zero irrigation, in a place that only averages, I think, 11 inches of rain per year and gets relatively warm. So pretty cool stuff. That's why in a contour, you would want to geographically locate yourself. Me, ideally, would be over by a mountain, right? So whether you're relying on snowpack, you're relying on rain catchment, you want to be by a national forest that's protected where they can't log it and things like that. You don't have to worry about erosion because you have plenty of trees and plants and stuff holding. But all that water, just like I told you on that road in my place in Fallbrook, all that water, natural clean water, would be rushing down to your property and gives you a chance to collect it. Now, as we go further in water catchments, you're going to see why contour is so important. Because if you had, say, a hill or mountain or street or anything above you, as that water channels in, you can literally snake it through your property. You can put obstructions, which is my next note here, as a gabion. If you don't want to, and there's many ways to build gabions. So a gabion is basically a steel cage with stones in it, rocks. You can take this to the desert, and you can find those areas, as I said, where there was a huge rainfall, where you can see all the destruction, you know, and you can set up these steel cages. You can fill them up with rocks that are all the way around you, and the next time that rain event comes and hits those gabions, it's not going to wash them out if you build them big enough. What's going to happen is it's going to hold all the sediment in that area. It's going to actually slow down that water like a speed bump, basically. And what you're going to have is you're going to have actually a rich little mini pocket, which I don't think you could do much because you don't have water. Right? You can maybe do a season of something depending on what type of year it is, what time of year, and you'll have this little pool area right there, right? And everything will seep in the ground, and there'll be this rich sediment. You're going to get that fine stuff that's on top, like when you did your soil sample, right? This is why contour is important as well. It just hit me right now, is when you take that water and you shake it in the glass and you see all the organic matter on the top. What happens when it rains and water washes? That light, fresh organic matter is what gets washed off, and it travels with the water. So if you put a speed bump or a gabion, as they're called, any kind of obstruction in front of it, what'll happen, depending on the amount of water that's rushing, how fast, it'll actually hit that speed bump. And what does a speed bump do? It slows things down. It actually can capture things as well, where that sediment right over those speed bumps is where you're going to get the fresh organic matter on the top. That's very healthy for soils. So contours. Can't say enough of how important the contours are. How dangerous as well, actually, now that I'm thinking about it as well. If you're going to start practicing gabions and Hugelculture, which we're going to get into, and practicing snaking, putting curbs, berms, and things like that on your land, and it's got a high slope. And again, with that type of soil, if you've got silt, right, a lot of silt, clay, or not enough clay, right, stuff to hold it, you've got a lot of sand, what's going to happen is if that water's holding up there, it's going to turn into a mud bank, and you're going to end up having mudslides. So it's very important. I see a lot of people throwing shit around like, let's build Hugelculture and let's build ponds and dams. And you need to know what the fuck you're doing first before you kill yourself, hurt something, or cause some destruction. So contours are very, very significant. They can be your best friend. They can actually be your worst enemy as well at the same time. God, I could probably make this fucking show about 3 hours long, man. Let me wet my whistle here because my throat's starting to get dry. All right, so we talked about gabions, and that's pretty cool. There's a gabion, I says it's just an obstruction. There's many, many things you can do. Use your creativity. You could use old pallets and stuff like that. I was going to try to make a joke, but it was a bad joke. But yeah, anything that obstructs water and kind of holds it into a place is a very good thing. So let's move on to rain catchment cisterns. Now, I think that if you're gardening, a lot of the people I know around here will actually capture their rain in off their roof, again, in like 55-gallon drums, or there's those IBC totes, which are anywhere from 275 to 350 gallons, I believe. Now, what you guys can do if you're on small scale, you can actually create yourself a cistern out of these things, meaning that it's a giant vessel, right? We want to up this in size. What you can literally do is you can actually stack your 55-gallon drums on top of each other. You'd want to bolt them, strap them down if you live in earthquake country like I do. You don't want something like that falling down and causing destruction, right? But the IBC totes, I think, would be really safe. I think that you'd want to strap those together. You wouldn't need as 55-gallon rain drums. If you stack 3 of them up high, you'd want to bolt that into some wood, like the side of your house or something. But what you're going to do, regardless, with the IBC totes, with the 55-gallon drums, is you're actually going to run a U-shaped pipe. I would recommend like a 2-inch in case you get sediment and things like that. And basically what you're going to do is you're going to use a rubber grommet. A bulkhead fitting. You can find these at any fish store places, or you can order them online. And basically what it is a rubber gasket. You can drill a 2-inch hole into whatever plastic you want, or metal, and it literally has a threaded screw with a gasket on the end, so you can literally make a valve, right? But we're not here making a valve. What we want to do is connect those pipes. The bottom one, let's just start from the bottom 55-gallon drum or the IBC tote. We want to make a U shape. We want to cut a hole in it, connect that to the upper one. And then from that upper one, we want to connect that to the upper one, the one above that. What's going to happen is all that water standing like a tower, and it is in my opinion, you might hear different things somewhere else, is if you did put yourself a water hose at the very bottom of this thing, you're going to have a lot of pressure from all that water wanting to push down, and that's going to help you set up drip irrigation, which we're going to talk about later in the show. But it causes some pressure and actually saves a lot of space. Now, if you're, excuse me, now if you're on a farm and you have lots of rainfall, you really want to take advantage of this and store as much as possible. You can use larger vessels. I mean, 1,000 gallons, big old giant vessels of plastic cisterns. I think that would be very wise of you. Now, geographic, strategic location of these things, we were talking about gravity as well. I don't understand why a lot of people like to build their house up on top of the hill. You know, you don't want to build your house on top of the hill. You want to utilize gravity. What you want to do, if you can, is build your house at the lowest section possible. That way you can place your cisterns and things like that can capture rain, and you can have them fill up. And if a cistern, I forget what it was for every foot or inch of raise, how much water pressure you actually get. But it's not really important here unless you're dealing with completely flat land. But yeah, if you're capturing rain in cisterns, even if you had a slight hill and you were catching water off your roof should be at least 7.5, 8 feet tall. Now, if you're able to get a cistern just even a foot above your home, as high as you can get it, that water with a slight little pitch will run down that pipe. Try to make it as level as possible with the least amount of tilt, comfortably be able to capture all that water and to fill up your cisterns. So, and if you're pumping water and things like that, I think it's definitely, you don't want to pump twice. If you're pumping water out of a well, which we're going to talk about if we have time, you want to pump it up and you want to gather it in a cistern, in a storage tank, and then be able to utilize that gravity to water things later. Before I forget too, there's feral cement. It's basically cement. You can mix it with certain things. There's different creativity things that people are doing with it, mixing it with maybe hemp and stuff like that. But I think just straight out cement with chicken wire, you would need 2 people, but you could literally build yourself a cistern for pennies on the dollar. In fact, you could build yourself a house. You could build pretty much anything with feral cement. Take a look at that. I think it was F-A-R-R-A-L, feral cement. Just YouTube it, and YouTube will correct me if my spelling's wrong. It's pretty cool shit, man. So that's what they do this stuff in like India and Africa. They'll build actually feral cement water catchment systems. All right, let's move into some permaculture now. Swales. You hear a lot of people talk about a swale, or as they say in Australia, a swile. It's a swile, mate. If they even fucking allow them to do this shit anymore. I heard stuff's getting pretty crazy over there. Sorry for you Aussies out there, man. Fight for your rights, dude. Build yourself some fucking swales. Don't ever stop the permaculture, man. You people fucking rock it. So, swales. What is a swale? Swale is basically it's a gutter system, right? It's a berm, which I have on the bottom of here. We can talk about these both simultaneously here. It's like a gabion, a gutter system to where all that water is flowing on your land. And a swale is when you basically make yourself a ditch, a gutter system. You flop that water over, which actually in turn creates a berm. And then all that water that's flowing through your property, instead of floating straight down the contour, it's going to hit these berms and these Hugelculture beds. And it's actually going to, or these swales, I'm sorry. And the water is going to swale the water, and it's going to snake across your property. So we talked about water saturation. So the significance of swales and berms is that it stops a lot of the sediment from washing off your land. It actually probably will deposit some fine sediment that's coming from wherever, the road or the mountains. Capture this and actually deposit there on your land, and gives everything time to soak in. And actually, as I explained to you guys about my lemon and lime trees, if all that water is sitting at the top, utilizing gravity, it will slowly throughout the year, without any power, without any inputs or nothing, it will slowly seep down path of least resistance and actually irrigate your land for you. You can even do swales and berms on small scale, even on flat land. There's actually no such thing as flat land. If you went and surveyed with a laser or a water, a level, an A-frame level, which I don't have time to get into to talk about today, you can actually find out that you have little bumps and divots and valleys and things on your property, even though you thought it was completely flat. So yeah, swales are really cool. The Hugelculture, which is next on my notes here too, is that when you can literally take and utilize where the water's coming down inside of these gutter systems, these swales, these little berms, right? And you can, before you flop that dirt over, you can actually dig yourself another ditch, or you can just line a bunch of wood down and bury that with wood over. Now that creates the berm, that creates the gutter side. And what's going to happen is all that moisture that comes in, the Hugelculture bed is going to stop the erosion from happening, but it's also going to seep the water in. And remember we were talking about sandy soils being so shitty? Well, that wood's going to absorb a lot of the water that's being held in that swale, and as it breaks down, it's going to do what? It's actually going to create soil. So Hugelculture beds are something that's really awesome. And then wood core, as I mentioned. Wood core beds, Hugelcultures, in my opinion, there are some done here by a very, one of the top guys that's out in permaculture. And I'm not going to mention his name, and I don't know the full story, but I don't know what was mentioned over here, but it's complete failure. Complete failure. Places where we have, like here in San Diego, I don't know if the Hugelculture beds were built on contour, if they were nice and level, if they had like a good 1-inch drop for every 100 feet, but they definitely they're not successful. So that's when, in my opinion, you would want to do wood core beds in a place where it's very hot and dry. You do not want elevation, because what does water do? It runs off. So you'd have to keep those Hugelculture mounds wet and if you wanted to actually produce something. Best thing you could do is actually dig the dirt out, line the whole bottom with rotting wood, or even fresh woods, depending on who you're listening to and what your ideas are. Bury that in the ground and actually maybe even recess it a little bit so the water actually will sit and have time to soak into the cordwood or wood core bed. So wood core beds in Hugelculture, you guys might hear these things. I'll just kind of quickly bring it out here into the light. It's the same shit. It's the same principle. You're basically just burying logs or some sort of spongy material under the ground covered with soil. So don't get too confused. All right, so moving from swales, berms, Hugelculture, and wood core beds, we're going to talk about PA Yomans. And the reason why we want to talk about PA Yomans is reservoirs and keyline design and actually capturing water. He's Australian, and you guys might want to check him out. He has a really difficult book to understand. His book, according to another guy, which you guys should look, is Mark Shepard, Water for Every Farm. Mark Shepard did a conversion of the book basically for us to understand in this day and age, this lingo, because P.A. Yomans is no longer with us for many, many years. But his work, his YouTube videos, or he didn't have a YouTube channel, but the YouTube videos on him, his book, and all the information associated is definitely worth a read. And also check out Mark Shepard, Water for Every Farm, to figure out, well, what are all these things like I'm talking about? How do you capture water on land? And I do want to say that these guys did things on large scales, and Mark Shepard is still alive with us. Thank God. He's a very wonderful human being, and I'd love to meet him one day. But he is he's continuing to do these type of things all over the world. And if you're backyard gardening, I don't want you to get discouraged and to say, well, they're just talking about large scale, 100-acre farms and stuff like that, and big giant plows. And what I want you to do is to consider taking these concepts, and once you learn how these things work, you can do this on any scale. You can do it on small scale. You just need to understand how the principles work, and we're going to talk a little bit more about them going further on in here. So P.A. Yomans said that if you're not using all your water, you're wasting water, which makes sense, right? I think in Australia, in the places where he lived, they got lots of water. He had the YouTube videos I saw; they were in black and white and stuff. But these huge lakes, and again, they were controlled with pipes under the ground using gravity and things like that. Beautiful fucking work this man did. But yeah, if you're not utilizing all your water, and we get another rainstorm coming in, and you don't have swales, and I'm just kidding, swales, and don't get mad. Don't throw a boomerang at the back of my fucking head. You're not utilizing land berms and things like that to divert your water, and the rainstorm comes in, fills it up, and then you have a spillway of extra water going. You've wasted your water. You basically want to get rid of that water every year, get it into the ground, get it into a place where it'll store for you for free, and start really doing good. So reservoirs. Reservoirs, I think, on large scale properties. Small scale, you got a little pond in your backyard. The only thing I can say is that fresh rainwater, there's nothing like it. And I don't know if I have it on my notes here. I do want to say, guys, my God, all this roof catchment water, unless you have a silicone roof, you have some very toxic shit that's coming off an asphalt tar shingle roof, off an asphalt tar flat roof, off of a tile roof, off of a metal roof. Go up on a metal roof. Well, go do yourself this favor. Go out and look, and what you're going to see is there's chemicals known in these things to cause cancer and birth defects and things like that. So I'm not saying you shouldn't. I think that you could. A lot of stuff washes off and things like that. And God, there's so much to talk about really about water. I thought this show was going to be like a 30-minute small show. But yeah, if you're using it for drinking or using it for your ponds, for your fish, I don't think you should probably do that. I think that utilizing it in the ground, there's filtration where water's running through all the sand and everything like that. I think it's safe, relatively safe to use. I mean, if we want to be a purist and start looking at everything, plastics and shit like that we have, which also cause cancer or birth defects. That's why I want to get the fuck out of here and go get to the homestead. But there is, you can't get crazy with this shit, right? It is good to capture your water, even the water off of a road. And, it is useful. And I think that it's semi-safe. It's not going to kill you immediately, but really ideally, as I said, the ideal homestead would be water coming off of a dirt road into a clay ditch, or coming off a mountain, filling up, say, my water reservoir that I wanted. So anyways, that's what I thought I would say there. So reservoirs, yeah, again, you want to, it would need to be on low points of your land. Again, this is where contour comes in. So if you have water running in, you have a relatively good contour, say like a 3 and 12 pitch, is a really good. That means for every 1 foot, the land, if you put it from ground zero and protrude it out towards the way the land is falling, for every foot, it drops about 3 inches. That's kind of a good, safe place to play with, I think. But what happens with contour and why it's so important is that as all that water is running down this 3 and 12 pitch, you have areas where you can actually form a reservoir, because we always want to use what? Gravity. So you're able to form little reservoirs all over, little pockets, to where all that rainwater, say, used through a berm, what do you call it? A Hugelculture mound, a Gabion, whatever, a swale, and it's all being shot over to fill up this reservoir. Once the reservoir fills up, and it could be any size reservoirs, that water is going to fill up. You're going to do another spillway, another swale or a Gabion or something, where that water can actually be channeled into the next reservoir. And you want to hold these reservoirs as much as possible on your property to slowly start seeping that water out. Contour is a very tricky thing too, because the more contour you have, the faster that water runs away from your land. Now, if you have a little bit of contour, that's why I said like a 3 and 12 is kind of cool, because it's very slow reacting. All that water that goes in the ground is not going to rush off, whereas a 6 and 12 piece of land, that water is going to go within a few months. It's probably already gone off your property, even though it's saturated in the ground. So we got reservoirs. Really, really cool thing. I want to share a tip with you guys. I learned from the Prince of Permaculture, Jeff Lawton, our friend out there. You can actually repair ponds with or reservoirs with ducks. I believe probably even geese. I believe, if memory serves me correctly, they used elephants. So what happens when you build these little reservoirs, right? You'll either have to line them with, like, say, PVC or EPDM pond liner, which is costs money, and it's bad for the environment, as we said, and it's toxic, really. The ideal way is to use clay, if you have ready available clay on your property. If you did, remember we were talking about the shaking the water up and having the clay separate inside that jar. Well, why wouldn't you be able to do it on a larger scale on a certain portion of your property? Or the land, well, I wouldn't want to disturb the land around you, but on your property, to where you can get that clay, isolate it, load it up, and then what you would do is you would dig yourself your reservoir, your pit, and you would line the whole thing with the clay. You'd want to do several feet. Again, this takes some engineering and some understanding about how this all works. But our wonderful guy, Zepp Pulser, which I think I have on my notes here, yeah. he can teach you all about it. It's really cool shit. So basically you line it with the with the clay, and what I mean by when the ducks and the elephants and stuff come to fix the reservoir, if a reservoir is man-made like that, what will happen is it could crack, something could happen, or the pressure of the water will actually create a hole in it, and the water will seep down. Now, to my knowledge, the way most lakes have been developed, long-lasting lakes, is you get a divot, as I said what my property was. You know, I'm talking about huge lakes now. And what happens is all that water throughout the years and everything would accumulate there, would fill up, and water has pressure and a lot of weight to it, right? And it wants to seep into the ground. What would happen is that it seeps into the ground, and then it starts to flow on contour. If it hits hard pan rock or anything like that, it's actually going to start flowing, and what's going to happen is it's going to drag stuff with it, right? So it's going to create a cavity underneath. So there's literally a lake underneath a lake in most cases. Maybe not all, I don't know, but I have that's how lakes are basically built. So you have to take into consideration when you're building a reservoir that at some point at the heaviest, the bottom could give out, and a lot of that water is going to want to start flowing out. What needs to happen is that lake within the lake has to form and pressurize in order to hold all that water there, right? And then that's how you get a spring, right? A natural spring that's running through, or you get pressure from the ground and things like that. But these ducks will literally come in as the water goes down. You could release them, and they love it. And they'll take their little tiny precious feet, and they'll patter everything. They'll literally patch up the lake. They're going to move mud around. The water's all going to seep down to hopefully that focal point, the bottom where you had the problem. And you let these ducks just do their work. Elephants, same thing, will come with their feet, and they'll literally play in the mud, rub it all over themselves, but their big-ass feet are coming in and compacting that small little mud area where you had the problem. When everything dries up, because it's been compacted and smeared in, and with the ducks with their little feet just like literally like a, what do they call it, like a cob building, they just literally fixed everything for you. The next rainfall comes and it fills up. Thought I'd share that beautiful tip with you guys, because I think it's wonderful. All right, so let's move into keyline design, and that's where I said you guys should check out Mark Shepard. This, to me, could heal the world, could change the world, is changing the world. Keyline design, and I've done some of this myself with a broad fork, and basically what keyline design is, a plow that comes down with a shank, right, a piece of steel, and then it looks like a torpedo, like a submarine torpedo, this little piece of metal on the bottom. That's going to go down, say about, 6 inches, 10 inches, to 12 inches, to 14 inches. And what happens is, like a torpedo, once it starts to drag on the ground, the way it's designed aerodynamically is it's going to bury itself into the ground to a point. As you're pulling this plow, what's going to happen is very beautiful here, is it's not going to plow and turn the soil over. What it's going to do is it's going to crack the soil. It's going to bust it open, right? So all the microbiology and things within the soil, between the lines of these keyline plows, and this is P.A. Yoman's as well. That's why I mentioned him. What's going to happen is it's going to crack it. It's going to open up for oxygen to actually get into the cracks of the soil, and also all that sediment, the microbiology. Nobody's disturbed. It's just displaced. It just got very, very subtly, not like a plow whatsoever. So what happens with this is we're stacking functions. As you drag this plow, again, on contour, that's why contour is so important. When the rain comes, what is it going to do? It's going to fill up these contour, these key lines, these little ditches. And it's completely calculable as well as of how many gallons per foot of keyline pit that you have, how much water is going to hold, so that you know that if you're releasing that water from your reservoir, your ponds, your lakes, whatever, or a significant rain, you'll know how much keyline to actually keyline your property with. Again, on contour, meaning not straight up and down, completely or almost completely level with your property. You're going to follow it like a topographical map, if you've ever seen. You're going to follow those lines like a topographical map with this keyline design, and that's what's going to help hold that water, and many, many things are going to happen. You're going to start having funguses growing in there. You're going to start having ferns. The air is getting the soil is getting oxygenated. You're holding water in that ground, and it starts to create fertility in soil without you doing a damn thing except for key lining. So key lining is just, it's amazing. I could probably do a whole entire show just on that. And I'm sorry, I must apologize, I guess. I'm throwing so much fucking information at you guys. You guys are probably like, what the fuck? Listen to it a couple times. I'm only skimming off the top too, guys. We're not even going into full detail, so I hope I'm not overloading you guys, but I just wanted to give you guys a good show that's full of good information, hopefully, and maybe make you guys laugh here and there with my silly, stupid jokes. So yeah, keyline design, guys, is to me, I want to go talk briefly. What I did is it wasn't even a broad fork, basically. I think that's what they call it. It's when you do the exact same thing. This is why I'm saying all of the things I speak about in these books and things that I show you, actually, once you get the ideology, the philosophy, and the engineering of it, you can apply this on small scale. So here's a perfect example. You're not going to keyline your backyard, right? Your 1/10 of an acre, or your 30 by 40 foot backyard. But what you can do is grab this broad fork, which has two handles on it, and it's this big giant pitchfork that goes down in the ground. You step on it with all your body weight, maybe jump on it if you need to. That goes down in the ground, and what you're going to do is you're going to get off it and you're going to pull it towards yourself or away from yourself, whichever way you decide to do it. And what's going to happen is it's just going to bust the ground up a little bit. Then you're going to pull those forks up. What did that do? It just displaced the soil slightly, leaves the organisms so there's no tilling. It opens it up for water to get in, and also seeds, and loosens up the soil for roots to actually penetrate back in, oxygenation and everything like that. What I ended up doing was I actually used just a regular old pitchfork. It wasn't a broad fork because I didn't have the money, I had the money, I just didn't have I'm very cheap. I didn't want to buy one. But I actually went on contour practicing keyline design in my backyard. And I did see some significant greenery in that area because of loosening up the soil. So yeah, you see how we take all these things and put them together, and how once we learn, you can apply this really much to almost anything. God damn, we have a long ways to go. Holy mother of the Lord, guys, I don't even know if we're going to get through all this. All right, I spoke on my notes here, utilizing gravity for water pressure. I think we talked enough about that one throughout the show, so let's go over. And the reason why you want to do that is drip irrigation. For me, for automation on the farm, whether you're even in your backyard, whether you're on a large piece of property, if you can automate shit, anything in your life, for me, even living off the land, fucking do it. There's so much shit that you look at and you're like, you know what, I'm going to live peacefully on the farm. I lived on a farm. It's peaceful. But you are fucking married to that motherfucker, and you are busting fucking ass sometimes. Now, the beautiful part is that not like here in the big shitty on the farm, nothing's going anywhere. Nothing is you can take a nap, it's still gonna fucking be there. You can close your eyes, say, I don't want to fucking be here. Click your heels fucking twice, say, Auntie Anne, take me fucking home. Nope, you are home, bitch. Get that pitchfork and start working. Get to work, son. No, but anything that you can automate to save yourself time, because really I'd rather be sitting in a regular old hammock, and maybe sipping on some recreational moonshine that I brewed from my Swales, where I had all my sugar cane growing. I don't know why I'm not making fun of Australians. It's one of my favorite places. I'd love to visit one day. Just trying to be funny. But yeah, guys, so if you were using drip irrigation, you can utilize that pressure. If you have that water going up, you don't have to use a pump or anything like that. You can utilize that pressure of that water. If the cisterns or your water tanks are way up high, you can utilize that pressure to actually put drip irrigation on trees, your regular garden. For animals, everything. And before I forget, I really want you guys to take consideration, as I said, with roofs. The toxicity of them, that's going to have to be your decision to make, but I really want to share with you guys what I found in the recycled tire irrigation. And what sucks is that this shit works so nice. Basically what it is, it's ground up rubber tires, that street tires, and they're glued together in some way or melted together with little tiny cavities. So you can imagine an entire hose with little drips of water popping off every single end. Very convenient. When I started doing research, tires are so toxic that at the fucking landfill, at least here in the United States, they got to plow the dirt. They have to scoop the dirt from which the tires were sitting on and relocate that, right? They don't even want it you can't even go to a landfill and put these things in. They have to be segregated in their own area. And when that area is moved, they need to remove the soil with it. And we're taking these recycled things, we're watering our fucking vegetables. We're being lied to on a lot of shit, which is I don't want to get too crazy on, is why I want to get the fuck out of here to start my own fucking homestead. Right? I'm fucking sick of it. It's down, guys, let me just put this perspective. It's down to fucking salt. I'm very pissed off about this thing. It ain't gonna take too long. But guys, salt. Take yourself some pink Himalayan sea salt and you melt it in the milk. What's going to happen is some milk's going to turn pink and there'll be the sediment sitting on the top. It's called fake salt, right? They're shitting it. There's coloration where you get other pure Himalayan pink sea salt and the milk is white, right? You can do this with water and watch how everything dissolves and there's no particles left in it. Boil down water and see what you find, like mineral water from a well to tap water. Let me know which weird powder residuals you find. Anyways, whatever. Yeah, this shit's getting pretty crazy. So as I just said, well water. Let's move forward. Wells, from my experience living in a third world country using a well, sometimes the wells can actually get contaminated, or meaning that some minerals, things can shift. Remember we were talking about holding water in swales and in reservoirs and stuff like that? Well, you can imagine that full scale, a lot of people with septic tanks, right? A septic tank is basically two big giant vats. These concrete vats are plastic that fill up with shit water. When it fills up, it spills over to the next one. When that one fills up, if it doesn't have time to leach in, what'll happen is it'll go out to these leach lines, which are like, you can imagine like your fingers going out, these long pipes with holes in them. Those fill up and those leach out the liquids from the top and all the sediment goes to the bottom of the storage tanks. Well, where does water go? Water flows the path of least resistance. That's how we get aquifers and underground water storage, little pockets. What happens when we take in that pesticides, herbicides, and all the pesticides, in there, and you get shit water? Sometimes you can get contamination. I think we are getting contamination everywhere. So, very considerations with a well. You want to get your water tested regularly. A lot of times you get salty ass water. Some places too salty, which is the case out here, where you can't even irrigate avocado trees. Right? Avocados don't like salt. They don't do well together. They don't play well together. So. Yeah, you'll need to get your water tested. It was said that the farm that we purchased in South America in Uruguay, that it was one of the best wells in that town. In fact, other farmers had to come to get drinking water and stuff from that well because maybe it was possibly on its own aquifer, right? Something happened where they had a big problem. Now, again, science, it's very difficult for us to navigate to know what's going on under the ground when we think about wells as well. There are little pockets. When water starts to fall down into the ground, there's like little underground lakes. You can imagine like a U. Let's go back to the U, like a little cup, a bowl. Well, that water will come and fill up a bowl, and then it'll spill out and it may fill up a bowl but way below that, and those are your water reservoirs, right? If there's a little cave, there's rocks, depending on, again, how that soil, if it's sandy, rocky, this water just starts to go hundreds of feet down in the ground. I believe in Sunnyside, California and Central California, they're going down like 1,000 feet to get water. 1,000. That's crazy. And the water's what? Salty. So a lot of considerations on wells. The energy that it takes to actually pump that water, especially if you're going 1,000 feet down, if you're going off solar, again, to me, if you were homesteading, I would say you would want to get a pump that is ridiculously, not ridiculous, but a lot larger, as far as horsepower than what you think that you would have. Because, it's like, to me, towing, right? If you're towing let's say 10,000 pounds with a truck, and that truck's rated for up to 10,000 pounds, up to, right? It's going to wear down. Let's think if something was able to up to 20,000 pounds, and it's hauling 10,000 pounds. What do you think is going to happen on that truck? It's not too stressed out. My opinion, and, It could go many different ways with other people's thoughts, but my opinion is that truck that's rated to haul 20,000 is actually going to last a lot longer, and it's stressing a lot less than that one that's rated up to 10,000, right? So let's make sure we ramp everything up a little bit. That way we're not having burned out motors. And if we're relying on that, as we're talking about, water is very fucking important. If you're relying on this crop for you to survive, doing homestead, or it was your business, and then your well broke, and it took them, we're in a supply chain disruption right now, and it took them a few weeks to actually get out to fix that thing. What's going to happen in a few weeks, especially if that happens in the dead summer, which is most likely when you're going to be using the shit out of that well, and everything dries up? There goes your crop. Well, why is that significant? Well, by the time you replant everything, depending on when the well gets fixed, you just lost yourself a fucking season. In fact, if it's a very large enough, you just lost yourself a fucking year. So very significant. Which brings me into, God, I wish I could just keep going on each. There's so much to say. We're already an hour into this. Airlift pumps. I'm going to have to start running through this show here, and actually coming in midway. I might just have to split this up into 2 shows. There's just too much to talk about. I didn't think water was going to go this far. But I'll show you guys why I can't shut the fuck up about it. Because my next one is airlift pumps. And these things are fucking awesome. Basically what it is you get yourself a pipe. I got myself a PVC pipe in my aquaponics system. And you're gonna take a tube, like a water hose or something. You're gonna go maybe, this is just an open pipe. Open top, open bottom. Maybe you're going to go about 3 inches from the bottom of this pipe, and you're going to drill yourself a hole, and you're going to insert a hose with any type of air vessel. Obviously, the more air that gets in there, the more water it's going to move. So basically, you glue yourself, say, a small fish aerator, right? Those little motors, and you stick this into a 1/2-inch PVC pipe. You take that pipe and you submerge it down in the ground. And what's going to happen is once the air bubbles start coming in from 3 inches from the bottom of that pipe, an airlift pump. Basically, the bubbles start coming through centrifugal force or gravity, however you want to call it, starts to bubble the water up, starts to cause pressure. It'll actually move water, and I've seen this done up to like 20, 30, 40 feet. It'll actually bring the water up and spurp it out the top. Why is this significant? Because it's very low amounts of electricity. There is nothing like in a pump, right? When a pump's pumping, causing pressure, anything that could destroy. Like if you took yarn and dirt and you threw it right on top around that pipe, the air is just going to break that dirt up. It's going to take yarn and it's still going to spit it out the top. There's nothing stopping it. So airlift pumps, fucking awesome. Reason why they're used in aquaponics is you have to have aerated water, otherwise the fish will die. Plants will be kind of okay, but you're stacking functions, as we like to say in permaculture. You're aerating the water, but on very low volumes of electricity, you're able to move water, you're able to pump it and cause circulation. So very, very cool fucking shit. Damn. There's more stuff that I want to talk about here. I just got to get going to work. I didn't realize that we were going to take this long. I have to say I've been thoroughly enjoying, I thoroughly enjoyed today's show because I feel like I'm not rushed. Everything's quiet. I'm not having to focus whether some fucking asshole's going to drive in front of me. I don't know how many times you guys have been doing the show where I stumble. It's because somebody just cut in front of me. There's red lights, brake lights, and I'm like, oh shit, are we going to fucking die right now? At least I have it recorded. But that's how much I care about the show. I try to do it whenever I can. But this was really nice, and I think I'm going to have to split this up into part 2, just on the water alone. But if you're still listening, I'm going to take my notes, which I have here on my phone. I'm going to get rid of that for a second, but I really want to talk to you guys why I'm doing this homestead show, because I'm fucking fed up. I am tired, like I said, being lied to down to my salt, right? It's honey. There's fake fucking honey. They're using corn syrup, adding a little bit of dash of honey and calling it fucking honey, which is amazing because when you put the honey in the water and honey holds memory just like water does, and you start swishing it around, you'll actually see it gluing to the bottom of a bowl in the shape of a honeycomb. Right? And that's how you know it's real honey. Fucking crazy, blow your mind shit when you start looking into things. But yeah, I think that the way the regulations and the things are moving on around us, I'm actually getting quite tired of all this bullshit. It's unhealthy. It's unhappy. We have a lot of displacement of things. We have a lot of stress, a lot of anxiety. And the way to mitigate that, the way to stop that is actually to go back to the land. I grew up that way. I rode a horse to school, guys, every single fucking day. I got up and milked cows every single fucking day. It never really got out of me. It was a lot of work. You know, I never lost that sight. I'm not sure if that's exactly what I want to do, but when I think about all the hoops and the hurdles and basically someone controlling my life, where I get my food, drinking my own recycled shit water, a lot of you guys should probably take note that research in your town, they're literally serving you back your shit water. Now, they're not serving it back just raw shit, you know. They're transforming it. They're using chemicals and filtration and stuff like that. But if that doesn't raise an eyebrow and make you go, wow, what are we fucking doing? And what is so important about water, as we talked about today? Water is everything. It's the essence of life, and it goes way beyond. It goes into your spirituality, everything. I mean, structured water. We're going to talk about that in the part 2. But when you start to understand these things and you see the science behind it, if that's what you fucking need, you start to understand that we know hardly anything about water. And I think that we know hardly anything about life. I think the government hardly knows anything about how to take care of its people and do things for the best interest. I think that we need to take control for ourselves and start running our own lives and start becoming our own producers, because what they're producing for us is a shit fucking sandwich, shit burrito, right? We don't need that. They're already developing hospitals and medications, and cancer is supposed to run up. When you look at statistics, you look at it as a whole, and it's so confusing because there's so much information. When I look at the things that we're talking about, water conservation, keyline, and growing your own food, it's better for the planet, it's better for you, it's better for your children, it's better for your neighbors to actually get food that's laden with minerals and vitamins instead of grown for aesthetic reasons, so that they're twice in size, got wonderful color, but they have fucking virtually almost no flavor and literally no nutrient value. And we wonder why we're getting sick, we're depressed, and we're raping the land doing so. We need to change things around, and that's why I think we're going to go heavy on Homestead. And I really do think at this point that that's the future of where I'm taking my children, where I'm taking my life to. And I want to take you guys on the journey. I want to move from surviving, because that's what we're doing. We're surviving, having the government hand us shit, not even handing us stuff, providing stuff that we can buy. We're just surviving, right? And I think we're doing worse than that. It's killing us. It's literally killing us. This lack of nutrition and toxins and shit in our food, where we need to go and thrive. I want to thrive in life. I don't want to just survive. I want to fucking thrive. I'm already thriving, and I know that many things that I've done in the past, I'm able to do now. I've had many successes. I have way more freedom than most people that I know. Almost anybody I physically know, I have way more fucking freedom, hands down. And it's not a competition or anything like that. I would actually prefer to know somebody who has more, so they can teach me, so I can learn from them and shortcut and use them as my mentor. How do I get the fuck out of here? Many of them, right? So I hope that I help you guys in this way to gain freedom and to put things in perspective and help you live a happy, healthy life instead of just surviving. So that's the show, guys. Look for part 2. Might come this week, might come next week. I don't know. I've got to get this work. But guys, as I always say, you know what to do. Everything's the information is below. It really fucking helps out. Only if you want to and you find value in this show. Links below. But as I always say, go out there and have yourself a near life experience. Don't lose your muchness. Carry on the fire. Human up. Live it, love it, own it, and bone it, my friends.